All right, everybody, I am back, and so are you. Thank you for coming back. This is S. Anthony Thomas. This is the S. Anthony Thomas Show. Much love to all of you for all the kind words and spreading the word and letting everybody know about the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, I am back with a new guest. This time I talk with podcaster Billy Dees. We discuss online etiquette, his early days as a DJ. He tells a cool story about his mom, and we talk about his brief foray into the world of stand-up comedy. You're going to love it. Now, just to let you know, I had a couple of technical issues during the program, so there's a little bit of buzzing. I apologize to you for that, but you're going to love the show anyway, because maybe there's a little bit of buzzing going on, but after the show, you're going to be buzzing about how great what you just heard was. See what I did there? Check it out. All right, everybody, folks, listen. You know, you've been listening to me for a while now. I've never failed you. Everybody that I've brought on has been interesting. And the reason they've been interesting is because they've been interesting to me, so I know they'll be interesting to you. Today is no different. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to someone I've been listening to for a while, a member of the Pottern family. I know you know what that is. Mr. Billy Dees, how are you doing?
I am ready to conquer the world, man. I'm ready to go.
Wait a second, that's my job, dagnabbit.
Okay. And I don't know how interesting I will be, but I'll give it my best shot.
Well, I haven't figured out how to do it for myself yet, so I'm hoping you could take care of that.
Okay. I'll do my best.
Okay. Now, it's an interesting thing, because I was looking at your website and I noticed that you have your blog, I should say. And okay. I noticed that you had the commentary on the blog. And I know nowadays, and the way things are going right now, you have the slightest opinion and you get attacked immediately.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, have you had a real problem with that?
Do I have a problem with, people coming after me online and so forth?
Yes.
It comes with the territory. And I generally, my policy towards that is, if someone comes at me with a criticism, and even if it's a very aggressive criticism, but I feel that it has an intellectual merit, I will engage them a little bit. But when someone comes at me just for the sake of coming at me, and mean-spirited profanity, that type of thing, I just simply ignore it. I don't believe that you should ever engage anything negatively online. That's one of my little credos in terms of public relations and marketing and all that other good stuff. It's never going to produce a good result, in my opinion. So that's kind of how I handle that. You just have to ignore it.
I wish that more people actually had that opinion. I really do.
Yeah.
I have a Facebook page, and it was public. And I don't really have any really controversial opinions per se. And no one attacked me, but I had to take it private for a while because they literally would know better than to attack me. So they would literally attack my friends in the comment sections. Yeah.
Little wars go on in the comment section. Absolutely.
And it's an amazing thing because you never know what will set someone off. You literally put up something that is, if you looked up innocuous, you would see a picture of some of the statements I put on Facebook.
Right.
And I'd go, I'll tell you one thing. Normally I don't talk about this kind of thing, but the wings I had at Domino's were fantastic. No, it's not fantastic. You rotten demo.
Right.
And that becomes very, very difficult.
It becomes a point of contention. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you do the podcast versus the blog, because I always wondered, when someone does a podcast, how long have you actually had your podcast?
The podcast in its current form, probably about 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. I've been in the audio business and the radio production business for a long time, but as that went digital, as the emphasis went digital, the podcast in its current form probably about 3 or 4 years, and I've been blogging that's kind of taken a backseat recently, to be honest, with some of the other things that I'm doing. But I've probably been blogging for well over 10 years.
Okay, so you've been in that game for a while.
Yeah.
What? Now, obviously, you've been in the audio business. I read your bio and things of that nature. But
okay,
podcasting it seems to be a different animal than radio.
Yes.
And there seems to be more of an intimacy with this, than with radio.
Yes.
And what I wanted to know is somebody who has, experience in these different worlds. What drew you to podcasting specifically? I mean, what made you think this is something I want to do?
Sure. Well, for me anyway, it has to go back to my love of audio. And I believe that we are essentially vocal creatures as human beings. And the one thing about audio, especially when it's well done, that is you have an audio mic an inch or two away from your microphone, from your mouth there. Your voice travels an inch or two, and it essentially goes directly into someone's ear, just like you were bending over and talking to them in their ear. And it's an art form that you have to rely on your wording, you have to rely on your inflection, and these other things. You can't rely on gestures. You can't rely on your looks. When you're doing a video, you can rely on graphics, eye charts, and all these other things. When you're speaking, and it's audio only, you only have the control of your voice to produce that communication. And that kind of, what I would call storytelling, that kind of communication, I feel, is becoming somewhat of a lost art. So many people now, forget high-end audio recording or anything like that. They don't even have conversations anymore. Everything's a text and broken fragments of sentences and things like that. So podcasting, in my opinion, has given new hope to communicators and storytellers. And there's a new appreciation now I've found for that kind of communication. Because even with radio, the last 10 or 15 years, it's and there's nothing wrong with being a business and chasing ratings. Every business has to be, sustainable. But when you're bound by chasing ratings and you're bound by these other things, your artistic, the way that you can express yourself artistically becomes limited. And that's one thing that internet radio even, and podcasting has done, is you are essentially creating content that people are going to seek out. And with radio, it's the other way around. In a commercial broadcasting situation, you're casting a wide net and hoping to catch as many as possible. So when you have that tailored content, it gives you the ability to express yourself about whatever topic it is that you're passionate about. And that's where I feel that, there's a lot of people who just podcast for fun and tell dirty jokes and all that. That's fine. But for those of us that are out there that really want to produce meaningful content, really want to, engage in communication in the spoken word as an art form, it is the modern day release of that. It is a great medium for that.
How
That's
old are
my
you?
Answer. You're going to go there. Okay, that's fine. I'm north of 50. How does that sound? I am north of 50. It's hard to believe. Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm 50 myself.
Okay.
And when I listen to podcasts and people that, like you say, understand this concept of storytelling, theater of the mind.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, my grandfather used to play tapes of, those old radio dramas,
Oh, absolutely, sure.
And I was fascinated with that because I would listen to sitcoms that I would tape from television, like Three's Company when I was a kid, and I would listen to them, and there was something missing because obviously it's designed to be on television, but there was something special about the radio dramas because they knew that the picture was being drawn in your mind. And that's a different type of storytelling. And that's why I find this so fascinating.
Yes. Well, that's an excellent point. Today, I've noticed, and it's hard to make a blanket statement, a generalization, but I have noticed there is an element with extremely young children now. With my friends, I don't have any children, but for my friends who have them and all that, very much in tune to what's happening on their tablets and so forth. And I've noticed, like, when you and I were kids, we could probably pick up a stick, and that would be our rifle or whatever. You could imagine things.
Exactly.
And now, and I've noticed that kids have a very hard time. Well, what is that? I don't understand. What do you want me to do? They can't take an object and apply their imagination to it. And that's a scary, aspect of something that I've been noticing. And, even the TV that you and I grew up with, inspired a certain amount of activity. One of the shows that I really liked when I was very small was The $6 Million Man, and as cheesy as it is now, when you look back on it.
Oh my goodness.
We would watch that show, and we would go out in the backyard, and we'd run down the street like we were running 50 miles an hour and all these other things, And nowadays, if that was the modern times of that, what we would do is we would watch the show, and then we would go open the app up on our tablet, play the $6 Million Man on the tablet. We wouldn't have that connection of it, not only increasing the activity in our minds and our imagination, but also our physical activity. And that's something I've noticed, that it seems like that technology has taken a good portion of the imagination that young people should be having, instead of enriching it. And that was the original intent, but it seems like it's taken the place of it rather than enriching their imagination.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, I still remember those programs, and
yeah.
when you watch them now, and you look at the special effects.
Oh yeah, I know, they're really crazy.
And that was literally one of my favorite shows as a kid. I actually had the $6 Million Man doll.
Oh, okay.
With the bionic eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember those programs. But the thing about it is, because the special effects were so horrible, I mean, if you really think about it, when the $6 Million Man was running, they just slowed down the film.
Oh yeah, you jump in slow motion, yeah.
I mean, we should, as people who watch those programs, we should have actually gotten a check, because we had to do a lot of work to imagine that he was actually running 60 miles an hour.
Exactly, sure, yeah. The suspension of disbelief is what it was called. Yeah, we had to do a lot of that back.
And of course, in the jumping on and off the building exactly the same way every week was impressive somehow. So,
oh yeah.
But, oh man, so I want to ask you, like I said, on your bio it said after or during your college years, you started a small audio service company.
Yeah. Yeah, what we used to do. Now, this was back in the old days. This was probably like in the late 1980s. We did sound reinforcement. We did a lot of work with bands. Actually, at that time, the corporate business that I had doing PA systems for lectures, and at that time, recordings of lectures and things like that for companies were very lucrative, actually. We used to do a lot of that. And I did a lot of nightclub work myself, disc jockey work. And that was back in the days when you had 2 turntables and a microphone. I had the 2 Technique 1200 MK2s, which are the standard DJ workhorse. Mm-hmm. And the flip mats and the everything, and I used to get these 12 inches. And I was really proud because I had these 12 inch records, And I can remember mixing off the top of my head. I used to play Rock Steady by the Whispers, mm-hmm. And I would mix Cameo's Word Up. That beginning of that bump would go right into the tail end of the Whispers Rock Steady so perfect. I would have a match for a whole minute. And, just things like that. I really enjoyed mixing, like that, working the crowd. And I know you work as a comedian, is that correct?
Yes.
You do stuff yeah. And, working a crowd, the art form of being a club DJ is very similar to working the crowd with comedy. A lot of people don't have appreciation for it. You know, they just come up, can you play the electric slide? That whole thing. But I mean, when you go to a real club and they're playing real club music, what those disc jockeys are trying to do is keep the dance floor full. And that's important because that's the heartbeat of the room. That's where the energy comes from. And one of the worst things you can do in a busy club is clear the floor. Because not only does it look bad, you know, it looks boring, but what happens is all the aisleways get jammed, the bouncers can't get through, waitresses can't get through, the bartenders get slammed. So you really want to try to have an even momentum. And what I would generally do is I'd hit with something that I know is going to work really big. For example, the last couple of years that I worked, that's when Usher's Yeah was really big.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd throw that out there. I knew that would give me a lot of energy. And then it's not a matter of what song you're going to play next, but it's what bass line is going to follow next, what tempo is going to follow next. And you ride that wave for as long as you can. And when you feel that wave is going to change, then, you know, it's time for something Eminem, Shake That Ass or something like that. And then you would keep that momentum going for as long as you could. And you want to work the room in a way that when, at the end of the night, you want them to feel like they're sorry that it's over. And slow and steady. And just like with your comedy work, you know, you do a couple setups, you know, hit them with a good punchline, and do a couple more, then you do a throwback to the other joke, and so it's very much like working a crowd. And that takes years, really, to get good at. And I don't know that the general public really has an appreciation for what some of those guys do. Now, there's levels that are way higher than what I did it at. But some of these DJs that travel the country and go around to these major clubs, they're really, really good at that. Really fantastic at it. And it always bugs me when I hear somebody say, well, they're just pushing play on a recording, just playing a CD player. And that's not it at all.
One of the things that's hilarious is what people don't understand as a live performer, DJ, comic. First of all, as you said, it takes years to develop the skills. And also, in addition to that, it takes years to be able to literally instinctively read an audience and know when you have to do what.
Yes.
You know, like you said, you have to be able to make sure the bass lines lead to the next bass line to the next songs. And I have to make sure the jokes and sketches are going the right way.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's tough. Yeah. I've got a lot of appreciation for what you do. I got to tell you, because I've tried it. I went through a little comedy development group here about 10 years ago, and incidentally, I would advise that for anybody, even if you don't want to work as a stand-up comedian, because it really helps your communication skills. You know, for people who may be in the corporate world who have to give speeches and all that, taking a comedy development course is great for your communication skills. It's absolutely fantastic. But some of the seasoned pros that, you can tell the difference instantly. Within 30 seconds if they're on that stage, you can tell they're a pro, as opposed to somebody who's just doing it on the side. You know, and I had a real great appreciation for the headliners that I was with, because they were just absolutely awesome.
It's really weird how, when they talk about people's greatest fears, greatest fear, public speaking.
Yeah.
You know, and it's amazing that, you know, as a live performer, DJ, comic, singer, the fear almost, after you get good at it, disappears the moment the performance starts.
Yes.
As soon as the music starts, not nervous, got stuff to do. You know, not nervous, got jokes to tell. Not nervous, got to sing this song. You know?
Yeah, well, you know, that's interesting. The moment that the performance starts, that's a key for me. One of the things that I've heard pretty consistently from seasoned professionals like yourself doing stand-up and other things is that no matter what venue you're in, no matter how often you've done it, a little bit of butterflies before you go on is a good thing. Once you're on, then of course it should disappear. But if you're before your performance, if your attitude is I'm going to go up there and kick ass, the audience will sense that and they'll hate you for it. And I've experienced, I never had that much fun. I witnessed it with other people. And it's true. I think you really have to respect the audience enough to care about your performance. And that's something that I always try to do, whether it's in podcasting or, I don't really do too much live stuff anymore. but I was always very conscientious. And when I worked in clubs, I was always very aware that a lot of people got dressed up on Friday night, come out after a long work week and so on, and this was their way to unwind. And this was something that they looked forward to, they anticipated, and you have to respect that. And so many times, a lot of my peers, man, I gotta go to work tonight, I gotta do this. That's just, you really gotta put yourself in the place that you're the reason that people are coming there, or you're a large part of the reason, and you can't let people down. You really have to have a respect for your audience.
And I want to say something to my audience. Do you hear what Billy just said? I mean, that's one of the things that I respect. It's like sometimes, in a way, you kind of respect a college basketball player that knows they have no chance of going to the pros.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
Because they love basketball. Yeah. You know, they're not thinking about a sneaker deal. They're not thinking about anything else. They're like, I love basketball. And if you can have that attitude about what you do, especially if it's something that you do for a living, life is a much better thing to live. It's just, absolutely. It's just a better way to go about the day. Yeah. Now, I wonder, now, you've been doing this for 3 years. Do you, now, full disclosure, I'm going to disclose something here. My original podcast is 5 years old and change. Okay. This one is doing very well, thank goodness. And it's new, and I've only done maybe 20, 23, 24 interviews. I still, as the interviewer, get nervous before I interview someone. And I've only done a couple dozen. You've probably done a truckload. And I wonder, do you still get nervous before you do an interview when you're the interviewer?
Absolutely. But it goes for both. I was nervous anticipating your call today, to be honest with you. And I'm nervous anytime I do an interview because I feel that I want it to go well. I want the person that I'm dealing with to walk away from the experience saying, that person really wanted me to succeed. That person wanted me to sound good. Mm-hmm. And I never want them to feel like I did this as a walkthrough. Mm-hmm. And that's important to me because I feel that you owe that respect to someone. And it's just like with you. You're well established as a podcaster. You work as a comedian. You're a skilled professional. And I owed you the respect of giving you intellectual answers and well thought out answers and sounding intelligent. And that
we'll be back right after this short break. And now back to the show.
Letting down your audience, So I mean that's something that I feel all the time to answer your question.
Just want to say for the record, when you said that I was a skilled professional, I want people to know that I actually sent that to you to say, but it also says incredible comedic genius. Did you skip over that 3x5 card I sent you?
Over that, yeah. Oh, so I'll throw that in right now. You're an absolutely incredible comedic genius, outstanding.
I mean, do you know how much money it cost me to mail that to you?
Yeah, I'll take an Amazon gift card.
Now, this is interesting. I usually love the origin stories of people, but I was looking here and I was looking at your parents, an engineer. Yeah. Your father's an engineer. Yeah. We have that in common, by the way. And, great. But my mother did not own a watch repair shop. Yeah. So there's the end of that.
Yeah, it wasn't anything grand. It was just a small business, and it was she did just basic repairs, things like broken crystals, broken stems, new mainsprings for the older watches where you actually wound a spring, and she made a living at it. It wasn't, and it supplement. My dad, I guess, was the main source of income, so it was supplementary to their income. But I'll give my mom credit with this. So she was very successful, and this was back in the 1960s and 70s. This was an industry that was people that fixed pocket watches, grandfather clocks, all those kind of people. That was a male-dominated business.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was in the 60s and 70s when she was the only woman. And, she had that attitude then too. And she, as an adult, she'd talk to me like I was, a man. She was like, that's what men always say. She had that attitude, and, it carried her through. And, she didn't take any grief from, men talking down to her or anything like that. I noticed that when I was a small child. Now, it still exists, certainly, but this was back in the late 60s, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And, this was when, sexism was just right out there. And, she handled it very well, and I'll give her a lot of credit. She was able to make a living. She was a very good mother. My dad had, some issues with, he was a war veteran, and he also had a violent family. My dad had some issues. And, she managed to handle that very well. And she just passed away last year. She just made it to her 90th birthday.
Oh, that's great.
And, I was a full-time caregiver, and my wife was an absolute godsend, because a lot of times when you have a sick parent and it's prolonged, there's a lot of times when couples, one doesn't always support the other 100% when the going gets really tough. My wife did. And, my wife and I actually kept her home to the very end, and, toward the end there, we had a hospital bed for her, and my wife and I actually stayed in the living room for her overnight, so in case she died at night, she wouldn't die alone.
Mm-hmm.
So, I gave my mom, hopefully the best send-off that I could. Let me tell you something, my mom was a character, and I mean that respectfully. My mom was a character. She was a lot of fun. She was a pistol.
I was going to, because that's essentially, you actually answered questions I was going to ask you, because when I saw owner of small watch repair shop, I went, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first question was going to be, yeah, I wonder if the guys in the industry were supportive.
Yeah, and she would tell you probably not, especially in the beginning. Yeah.
Because sometimes because I just did the math, and I said, wait a minute, this means she had to have been in this time period, and I said, oh boy.
Yeah.
And that's really weird, and because it's interesting, because when you have parents that do, when you watch them, like you had her and she had to be meticulous and putting this together and putting that together. Father, engineer, scientific, this, that, and the other. And it's amazing how those things creep into you.
Sure.
And it's really, because it's even when something, even as artists, as performers, as podcasters, bloggers, you start to notice how meticulous you go about your work. you
sure.
know, and I'll be honest with you, it kind of annoys people to going, dude, you're done. Not quite,
Yeah.
And I know, I mean, how much of that do you think you see in yourself?
My mom, I would have to say her sensitivity, as a human being probably, carries over to me. Because as much as she was a pistol, she got along with everybody. She had, a very big cross-section of people that were customers that came in to talk to her. There were professionals that came in. There were people that, were blue-collar workers. At that time, especially, this was very much a blue-collar area.
Mm-hmm.
The steel and all that was very big at that time in the late 1960s and 1970s. So she got along with everybody, and she really liked people. And I would certainly hope that I kind of carry some of that with. My dad was probably, more of a very factual, mathematics-driven person, very detail-oriented. I got my appreciation, I think, for science a lot from him. And he was very much into, space, physics, and, I still have that appreciation to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, out of those two things, to answer your question, that's probably what I carry with me the most.
I'm going to be honest with you. You literally just described me, so I'm just going to edit that part out. So whenever someone asks me about myself, I'm just going to...
It sounds like we have a lot in common. It really does. Absolutely.
It's really interesting because I read in your bio it said you enjoy science and physics. I have to ask you this.
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Do you nerd out on YouTube videos about the size of the universe and things of that nature?
There are times when I will, they have the little comparison videos, like here's Earth, and then here's the sun compared to it, and here's this compared to that. There's times when, I do, really enjoy those things. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. Neil deGrasse Tyson and all those guys, big fans of all those individuals. Absolutely. I kind of, me personally too, I'm not necessarily a history buff, mm-hmm. but I really have an appreciation for how key people came along, whether it be Kepler or, certainly Einstein, mm-hmm. And all these. Newton was a character. And I'll tell this to anybody who's listening, if you want an interesting read, grab some stuff about Newton, because as much as he was brilliant, he was also, way out there. He was an alchemist, which wasn't, necessarily, unheard of in his time. He, of course, believed he could predict the future, and a lot of other things. And, of course, we remember him for the things he could prove. Calculus still works. His calculations predicting the performance of gravity still work, although he didn't know what it was, and that was very frustrating to him. But these people came along, and they changed things in a way that they altered history. They changed our perception of the world. And to me, I find that fascinating. There's a clear time that was pre-Newtonian. And there's a time that, is clearly before, relativity. And the perception of the world has changed through these brilliant minds. And to me, that's fascinating. Watching that history unfold, that's something that I can really get into. Yeah.
That is.
I really sound like a nerd now.
Yeah. And it's just because I remember as a kid, being fascinated by that. I had an internship at the zoo and things of that nature when I was a kid. And I remember reading encyclopedias. By the way, young people I just want to say something really quickly to the 18 to 34-year-olds in the audience. There were these things called encyclopedias.
You had paper in them. You had paper and you had to flip the paper, yeah.
And you would open them and they'd have information and facts. You couldn't just say, okay, Google to your phone and
yes.
and have a video pop up. And I found those things fascinating. And that's why I was asking you, when I watched YouTube, I was watching the video and it said, what will the world be like in 1 to the 10 quadrillion years? And it just, and I sat there and I watched that thing 5 times in a row because it was fascinating, because I love when futurists come out and tell you what they think's going to happen. I mean, we should have, from what I understand, we should have spaceships by now.
Yeah.
And we're still trying to figure out how to do autonomous driving at this point.
Yes, that's true.
No. It can drive by itself, but we haven't figured out the legal ramifications yet. So, I think we're quite a ways away from having our own jetpacks. Anything of that nature.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm not so sure I want to fly on a plane that doesn't have any pilot. I'm not sure I want that to happen.
Oh, come on. You better go back. What happened to the young version of you that was running around making the bionic sounds and watching the $6 Million Man?
Yeah, no, but I wasn't. I'm not ready to fly on a plane that doesn't have pilots yet. I know those pilots want to stay alive just as much as I.
Isn't it amazing? You drive on the freeway and you see people. You're literally driving in something that's 2,700 pounds. It's going at 70 miles an hour, and you're looking at a phone.
Yes.
And I want that person flying over my house.
Yeah. You make a good point. Yeah, I can't deny that.
Yeah, I'm in the air 700 feet. Wait a minute. I don't like what this guy said politically on Twitter. I'll now look at that for 4 seconds.
That is true. That is true.
Well, the good thing about it is you'll get some really, really interesting unwanted house guests via the attic. So that's always good.
That is true.
Now, you were when I was just listening before I called you, you were giving tips on Twitter, on the
Yeah.
best ways to market yourself on Twitter. And they were pretty cool because I see a lot of people not doing that.
Right.
And, you know, if you were going to start a Twitter right now, you're just starting Twitter right now, you're going to market something, and you wanted this person to have the most effective Twitter, because I know people that are listening to me right now, a lot of these people came to me via Twitter, so they have Twitter accounts. How would you tell them to make them better?
Well, essentially, depending on what you want to do, let's say you're a podcaster or you have a YouTube channel or something else, or maybe you have a small business. You really have to decide first if Twitter is the best vehicle for you. I have found that Twitter is great for topical stuff. Anything involving news, authors, entertainment, topics such as that. If you have a small local business in a community or something like this, maybe you'd be better served, going Facebook business page or something like that. But presuming that Twitter is the way for you to go, you really have to decide. And it sounds like a cliche, but you have to decide who you are. Just like you have to decide who you are as a person, you have to decide who you are in terms of a business. Are you somebody who is your business value driven? Is it entertainment driven? Is it a costly, something like that? And what I always tell people, whatever it is that you do, if you can't describe it in a few sentences, there's a good chance that your potential audience doesn't know who you are either. So, with that in mind, you want to make sure that the avatar that you have, the picture that you have, kind of has that aura around it that fits your identity, whatever that may be. And you want to make sure that your bio fits your identity. Don't get too cute. I would avoid words like guru of the universe or something like that. A lot of these people, entrepreneur, that's another one that gets overused. Something that people, just like if I were to meet you and shake your hand, you get that feeling about a person. That's kind of how you want your bio to come through. And have some way for people to access your content very easily. In our case, we're podcasters, so we want to make sure people can find that podcast easily. If you're a blogger, same with your blog website, and on down the line. So that people, when they find you, and you're only going to have their attention for a few seconds, you want to make sure that they don't have to investigate you or do searches about you. If they want to say, gee, I wonder what this guy does, it's right there, one click away. And we kind of touched about this earlier, but you want to stay positive. I mean, all your tweets and everything, when you get involved in the thread and you get involved in the discussion, you want to make sure that discussion that you're having and the interaction that you're having with other Twitter members are going to reflect on you well. Okay? And that's the best part about getting involved in a Twitter conversation. That thread grows. People get your point of view. They get, again, your personality comes through. When you get involved in these Twitter wars, as they're called, all you do is produce bad things. Mm-hmm. You're going to get the person that doesn't like you to hate you even more. If it's someone who's trying to provoke you, you're going to give them what they want. You don't want to get involved in that. Stay positive. Stay true to the identity that you're trying to create. Research your hashtag. Make sure that the hashtags that you are using are the best hashtags, to bring in the people that you want who's looking for your content. And you can do that in a number of different ways. You can just try some different hashtags and follow those timelines. You can Google them. You can see what's working on other social media platforms. You just have to take your time and do it right. That would be my in a nutshell, my best advice.
Okay, all right. Did you hear that, listeners? Did you hear that? Okay. Now, before we go, I want to ask you about this. This is the last thing I want to ask you about because I've been fascinated about this. I lived in Los Angeles for a while. And one of my buddies was the engineer for Casey Kasem.
Oh, okay.
And I remember sitting in his studio. He recorded some stuff for me. And he goes, hey, man, you should try voiceover. And I never did, but you do. So,
yeah.
You're still doing that now, I'll take it, correct?
Yeah, sure. I don't, here again, I don't know if I can make a living at it, but I certainly do it enough that, it's something that comes up once in a while, and I'm always happy to do it.
Now, what advice would you give? Because I know that a lot of people like to diversify. They'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of this. I mean, just like anything else, you can't necessarily put all of your eggs in one basket. And from when I learned from him back in the day, definitely not the voiceover basket always. Where there was only one Don LaFontaine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For those of you that are listening, Don LaFontaine was somebody that a friend of mine used to record, and he's the guy. He passed away. We've lost him a while ago. He was this guy in a world where he was the king of the ABC.
Yeah.
He would walk in a world, blah blah blah. Okay, that's A. In a world. Yeah. That's B. In a world. That's C. All right. And everyone was perfect. He just walk in. He was so good.
Oh yeah.
He could walk in. How many versions you need? 6. Hold on. In a world. All right, we're done here. Okay, great. Yeah. He walked out the door. So is that something that you enjoy as well? Because it kind of falls in line with what you're doing here.
Yeah, especially when you were asking me about what I did in the back in the day in the late 80s, early 1990s. I did a lot of voiceovers back then, and that was back when we actually used tape, and we would, on what was called a half track, I used to take them to the different radio stations, and they would put them on what was called a cart machine. And boy, that's really going back at that. And, I still do, voiceovers and things like that for a lot of media at various places that I work during the day. And what I tell people is if you want to chase that kind of work, there are ways that you can market yourself as a voiceover person, which is a whole other thing, and you can, anybody who's interested can research how to do that. But essentially, the art form really is acting. And we kind of talked about that earlier when we were talking about being a good communicator through audio and voice. For example, the inflection that I'm going to use for a used car lot is going to be completely different than the identity that I'm going to adopt if I'm going to do a voiceover for a funeral home. Mm-hmm. And you really have to become that entity. You have to think about if you're doing a voiceover for a funeral home, you have to put yourself in the mind of sensitivity and compassion and being solemn and so forth. And the other mistake that a lot of voiceover people make, especially with software now, this is one of my little things that I preach about. Software at its best is great for editing. And I come from the world when any type of editing, whether it was audio editing or video editing, back in the day, what that was precision copy. You would have a multi-track recorder in the case of music that you would mix down onto a 2-track. So at that point, the mix sound was second generation. Okay. We now have the ability with our technology to manipulate what is essentially the initial signal and compile it the way that we want, to arrange it the way that we want. If you're using your software to make the recording sound better, if you're using your software to make a bad picture look good, you're using it for the wrong reason. And that's what I kind of preach to people. I've heard so many guys that do audio and stuff say, well, fix it in post. That's not what you shouldn't be using your audio to resurrect a bad recording. You should be using your software rather to resurrect a bad recording. Mm-hmm. And that comes with voiceover. People want to make themselves sound like James Earl Jones. This is CNN. And you know what? Not everybody's going to sound like him. And he has a fantastic, incredible voice, but it's not great for everything. So you have to find the best qualities that you have in your voice and accentuate those. Make yourself a talented speaker. Use your voice in the best way, just like a singer. A singer knows his limitations or her limitations. And they pick ranges and they pick keys that fit them the best. And the thing with doing a voiceover, don't try to sound like James Earl Jones or anybody like that. Try to be you. Pick out the best vocal qualities that you have and make that commentary your own, just like you do with a song. A singer has to make that song his own. you have to make that voiceover your own. You have to make it come across in your way that brings your personality to it and gets that message of that ad or that voiceover across. That's my best advice to anybody who's thinking about doing it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you not only were entertained, you also learned a lot of things, didn't you? Yes, we did. See, the audience likes it.
Well, I hope so. And I really got to say, I really appreciate you, asking me to come on. I was surprised when you did. And I really, you have a tremendous following on Twitter. And you have a great voice. And you do the comedic, bits, a lot of the little, statements and witticisms that you do in your podcast are really very good. I'm not trying to blow smoke at you, but you're very talented. And I said to myself, what's this guy going to ask me? So, I hope I didn't let you down. So.
No, you're fantastic, my friend. Now, Billy Dees, do me a favor. Let everybody know where they can hear you. And I'm going to link you anyway. I'm going to put the links on anyway. But give them the website and the Twitter. And I'm going to put them on the, I'm going to put them in the notes.
Oh, okay. For my stuff, I'm really going to find on Twitter. I'm just at Billy Dees on Twitter. BILLYDEES. And that's my primary thing for just about everything that I do. If you go to my Twitter account, Billy Dees Space, SCACE, that is my website, and that's where I have, obviously, the catalog of my podcasts are there. A lot of my essays are there. That's probably the two best areas to find everything that I'm doing.
Okay, and I'm gonna link those in the notes. Billy Dees, thank you. I appreciate you. And I enjoyed talking to you.
I absolutely enjoyed talking to you, and one of these days I'll have to have you as a guest on my show sometime soon.
Fantastic, and thank you, my friend.
Okay. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Hey, take care. All right, folks, thank you very, very much for coming back. I told you were going to enjoy that, and you actually learned some things too, didn't you? Of course, we entertain and we inform, and we love you for listening. Thank you. See you next time. Much love to you all.